Two angels, sent from the heavens, were tasked with observing human life on earth. Though they were beings of light and power, they were instructed to disguise themselves as ordinary travelers, unseen and unrecognized by the people they encountered. Their mission was not just to witness how humans lived, but to understand their hearts, the kindness, selfishness, generosity, and greed that shaped their mortal lives. The angels were eager to learn, though they knew that the human world was full of complexities that often defied heavenly logic. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun began to sink beneath the horizon, casting an orange glow over the hills, the angels found themselves in need of shelter. They had been walking for hours, crossing vast fields and winding roads. Finally, they came upon a grand estate, mansion that towered over the surrounding landscape. Its walls were of gleaming marble, and tall iron gates marked the entrance to the property. It was the home of a very wealthy man, known far and wide for his riches and luxurious lifestyle. Hoping for a night's rest, the angels approached the massive front door and knocked gently. After several moments, the door creaked open, and the rich man stood before them. He was tall, dressed in the finest silk robes, with gold rings on his fingers and a jeweled necklace that glittered in the fading light. His eyes flicked over the angels, noticing their simple clothes and dusty shoes. His face showed barely concealed disdain. Though he did not recognize their true nature, the man asked coldly, "What do you want?" "We are travelers," the first angel said, bowing slightly. "We seek shelter for the night." The rich man paused, his eyes narrowing as if weighing his options. Finally, he stepped aside. "Very well," he said, his voice sharp. "You may stay, but only in the basement. I have no room in my house for beggars." Without protest, the angels accepted his offer. He led them down a long, narrow staircase into the cold, damp basement. The stone walls were bare, and the air smelled musty. The only light came from a single flickering candle. In one corner, the angels noticed a large door slightly ajar. They saw stacks of gold coins, jewels, peering inside, and valuable treasures hidden away. It was more wealth than most people could ever dream of. But the angels did not touch a thing. They laid down on the hard floor and tried to rest. Throughout the night, the second angel felt a strange sense of unease. The rich man's wealth weighed heavily on his mind, not because of envy, but because of how it was hoarded and hidden, while others suffered and went hungry.
Before they left the next morning, the second angel quietly approached the wall where the treasure was hidden and touched it lightly. A soft, golden glow emanated from his hand, and the wall seemed to shift ever so slightly. With a silent prayer, the angel sealed the wealth inside the wall. The rich man, obsessed with his fortune, would now never find his hidden treasure again. He would be forced to look for meaning elsewhere, perhaps within his own heart. The angels thanked the man for his hospitality and continued on their journey. As they walked through the countryside, the first angel asked his companion, "Why did you seal the treasure? It wasn't ours to take, and yet you hid it from him." The second angel smiled gently. "Things are not always as they seem," he said. His wealth blinded him to the true richness of life. Now he will be forced to confront what is truly valuable. Sometimes, people need to lose what they think is important to discover what really matters. The first angel nodded, though he did not fully understand. They walked on in silence for several hours until they reached the outskirts of a small village. Nestled between two rolling hills was a tiny farm. The house was modest, with a thatched roof and wooden walls that creaked in the wind. It was clear that the couple who lived there were not rich, at least not in material terms. The fields were small, and the animals few. As the angels approached, they saw an old man working in the garden, his face lined with years of hard labor, and beside him was his wife, bent over the stove, cooking what little food they had. When the angels knocked on the door, the old woman answered, her face lighting up with a warm smile. "Welcome, travelers," she said, her voice soft but full of kindness. "Please, come inside. We have little, but what we have, we gladly share." The angels were led into the humble home where the fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the simple furniture. The couple insisted that the angels take their bed while they slept on the floor. They shared their meager meal, a few slices of bread, a bit of cheese, and some soup with joy and hospitality, treating their guests like family. That night, as the angels lay in the bed, the first angel could not help but smile. "Such kindness," he said softly. "They have so little, yet they give so much." The second angel, however, seemed troubled. He was staring at the old couple who had fallen asleep by the hearth, the fire casting shadows on their faces. "Something is not right," he whispered. "I can feel the presence of the angel of death." The first angel sat up, alarmed. "Death? But why here? These people are so good, so kind. Surely they do not deserve to suffer." The second angel said nothing for a long moment, his eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. "The angel of death has come for the wife," he said finally. "Her time has come." The first angel's heart sank. "Is there nothing we can do?" The second angel rose silently and walked toward the couple. His wings, invisible to human eyes, spread wide as he knelt beside them. After a long moment, he turned back to his companion. "I have spoken to the angel of death," he said quietly. "He has agreed to take the cow instead." The first angel was puzzled, but trusted his companion's wisdom. They stayed the night, and in the morning, the sound of the old man's sobs woke them. The couple's only cow, their main source of food and income, had died during the night. The old man was devastated, cradling the cow's lifeless body as his wife tried to comfort him. Seeing this, the first angel was filled with anger and confusion. "Why did you let this happen?" he demanded. "When we stayed with the rich man, you did nothing, but here, with these good people, you took their only cow. Why?" The second angel's expression remained calm, though his eyes were full of understanding. "Things are not always as they seem," he said gently. "When we stayed at the rich man's house, I sealed his treasure inside the wall so he would never find it. He needed to learn that wealth is not the most important thing in life. As for this couple," he continued, "the angel of death came last night to take the wife's life, but I pleaded with him to take the cow instead. Their loss is great, but it spared them from a greater tragedy. In time, they will find more joy and fortune than they could ever imagine." The first angel was silent, processing his companion's words. At last, he nodded in understanding. As they continued on their journey, the angels knew that the lessons of humanity were deeper and more complex than they had imagined. They also knew that sometimes what seems like a misfortune is in truth a hidden blessing. As the two angels returned to heaven, they were greeted by the golden gates shimmering in the eternal light. The air was filled with the sound of celestial choirs, but both angels felt a deep reflection stirring within them after witnessing humanity's behaviors. God, seated upon his radiant throne, looked at them kindly and asked, "What have you learned from your journey among humans?" The first angel, speaking softly, said, "Lord, we saw a world divided. On one side, humans driven by greed. They hoard wealth and power, their hearts consumed by desires for material riches. These humans neglect their fellow beings, blind to the suffering they cause. They believe in their own strength and forget about kindness, compassion, and humility." The second angel added, "But there are also those who walk a different path. We saw humans who live with faith, who give what little they have to others, and who protect your creation, Lord. These people pray, help the sick, feed the hungry, and nurture the earth as stewards of your gifts. They find joy in service, in love, and in sharing." God listened thoughtfully, his gaze never wavering. "And what do you make of this contrast?" he asked them gently. The first angel hesitated. "It was hard to watch, my lord. The humans lost in their greed seemed to be destroying themselves and the world around them. Their selfishness brought only sorrow." The second angel, however, smiled softly and said, "But Lord, the goodness we saw was like a light in the darkness. Even though there is much greed, there are still so many hearts full of love and faith. The good outweighs the bad, even if it doesn't always seem that way." God nodded. "You have learned well. Humanity is flawed, but it is also capable of great goodness. Their choices define them, and it is through both their struggles and their kindness that they shape their souls. My love for them remains, for within each person is the potential for light." The angels bowed, humbled by the wisdom of the Almighty. They realized that despite the imperfections of the human race, there was always hope, for even in the darkest of hearts, there was the spark of redemption. God in his infinite patience watched over them all, waiting, guiding, and loving them, no matter the path they chose. And so with hearts full of understanding, the angels returned to their duties, knowing that their journey had deepened their faith in the potential of humanity.